So my talk is going to be based on the empirical evidence of the concept that Stefan presented. And I think we all know that the collective production, processing, and marketing could reduce the transaction costs that Stefan talked about being very high. And this also been shown that even bargaining power of the farmers, if they work collectively, they are a lot more efficient and they're a lot more having more clout. Now, the Transact project is trying to build those horizontal and vertical linkages, and the vertical and the horizontal linkages that we are talking about for the farmers. They can be in groups, and as such, they can have a lot of services that they were getting, for example, through the cooperative that Stefan talked about. And we also know that the policy in the country of Tanzania currently is very much aiming at increasing the food security and other things. And among the thing that they are doing is to increase the production of edible oil. For example, they have selected the central region of Tanzania as the region that is going to be sunflower is going to be the edible, the priority crop. As such, if you look at the importation of edible oil in the country, for example, Stefan just showed that 30% of the food import in the country is accounted for by edible oil, and that's something which is very, very serious. That we have not been considering edible oil as one of the aspects in food security, but look at the amount of money that the country is using. And we did another thing which is also quite exciting. We looked at the importation of different things in the country. Now, the first one, of course, as expected, is that petroleum is the one which is the leading import, followed by transportation and tubes and others. Edible oil is the fourth largest import in the country, telling us that, well, we need to have some strategy for us to be able to increase the edible oil production in the country so that we don't import as much as we are doing currently in the country. Now, the aspect of cooperatives dying because of the government interference is something that the country in Tanzania itself and other sub-Saharan African countries, they have learned a hard lesson because they were vertically and horizontally linking the farmers, something which was very good, but because of the interference, the cooperatives sort of really deteriorated. And the country currently, Tanzania, is trying to rebuild them. And that's something which is very good. And we believe that our study is going to increase and add more value of the thing that they can do because of the kind of thing that we are seeing. And there are also opportunities in terms of others that the urbanization in the country is increasing very much, just as it is in across Africa, that by 2050, we expect that more than 50% of the Tanzanians are going to be living in urban areas. And that's a very big opportunity for the farmers because they can sell their crops at a higher price because they have a lot of consumers who are in town, they don't have food. And that's something which is very good. And there is also increasing demand for these high value crops, the horticultural crops, edible oil, like sunflower. As you can see here, there is an increase of the volume of imports. And that's something which is again telling us that why are we still importing food while we have a lot of land, a lot of farmers who can grow this? And that's something which we are looking at, and we believe that we are going to be able to help and provide some of the answers to the agricultural sector in Tanzania. But let's look at the situation itself in the country. Are these horizontal linkages, farmer groups, and vertical linkages, are they helping in terms of commercialization, in terms of food security, in terms of income? And this is the evidence which we based our study. We look at about only 20% of the farmers, they have those horizontal linkages. They are in farmer groups. And only 4% of them, they have the vertical linkages, that they are linked to processors or they are linked to big consumers like hotels or grocery stores or big traders. And what we need is to have both the horizontal linkage and vertical linkage. Only 1.2% of the farmers, they have those linkages. The one that existed during the cooperative movement period, 1930s to 1970s. And that's something which we were lost. We have to regain it back because it has a lot of advantages, as we are going to show here. But we also did an ag trade survey. We went to the ag traders and asked them, what linkages do you have? How do you conduct your business? 24% of them, they had horizontal linkages, the ag traders, and 6% of them, they had the vertical linkage and horizontal linkages, something which we again need to have. And we asked them a question, if they have binding contracts with the farmers or not. Only 4% of them, they had the ones who have vertical linkage, they had those binding contracts that when you grow your food, I need so much tons to be brought to my business. And only 4% of those, they have such an agreement. But 16% of them, they had an agreement which is not binding. And that's something which can be changed, and we are working towards that. Now, let me look at what we have done to create these vertical linkages. We did consultation with the farmers, just as Astrid and Stefan said. We had on the bottom-up approach. We started with the farmers. We had a consultation, and then we also consulted with the processors in Tanzania. As you can see here, we are doing consultation with the processors who are crying for a large volume of sunflower, which is not there. Instead, they are importing sunflower from Argentina and Ukraine, and something which we have a lot of farmers in the country, but they are producing very small amount, which the processors are not interested. And that's what we did. And when we looked at there is an increasing capacity in processing of oil. We picked only 3 processors in the country, and they are processing about 40% of what, 50% of what the farmers are producing in the whole country. Only 3 processors, and we have a bunch of them, meaning that the processing capacity of sunflower edible oil in the country is very large. But the problem is the production and also the quantities of produced by individual farmers is very small. So the problem is on the production, not on the processing. The processing is developing very quickly, but we need to do something about this. Now, we also looked at the improved varieties in Tanzania. By the way, there is only one improved variety of sunflower in the country, and it was released 30 years ago. The yield is very low, it's only 1.6%, and the oil content is very low because there is not much investment into research. Actually, the breeder who was doing this, she has already retired. There's no sunflower breeder in the country, meaning that we are not investing into edible oil, while edible oil is the 4th largest import in the country. This is a problem that needs to be addressed. We also looked at what are the advisory services that the farmers are receiving. You can see that only 3% of the farmers, they are receiving advisory services on trade and things which are not related to production. Again, I go back to Stefan's presentation that the investment in the countries, the African countries, have been on production, assuming that we are dealing with subsistence farmers who produce and eat everything they produce. I'm a son of a farmer, and I know that the peasant farmers, the subsistence farmers are dead. The ones that we are dealing with now should be linked to the market because they are very much linked to the market. 70% of the farmers in Africa, they have now cell phones. They have to sell to buy the airtime and all those things. So meaning that they are connected to the market. That's something which is very good. Then we asked the people who were receiving the advisory services on market information. About 40% of them, they were receiving that information from their fellow farmers. And only about 2% of them, they are receiving information about agricultural marketing from the agricultural extension agents. Only 2% of them. Again, this is a very serious business. We are not advising the farmers on the marketing linkage, and that's a serious problem. Now, what's the impact of these horizontal and vertical linkages? And this is an interesting study that we have done. We collected the data that we are using here, the ones that are collected across the whole country. And the thing is that when the farmers have vertical linkage that we created when we did the consultation with this is Mount Meru, they said that we need the farmers to be bringing a big volume to me, and this is the price I'm going to be offering them. If the farmers use only the local variety unimproved, their profit is going to increase by about, say, 86%. But if they use the Tanzanian improved variety, which is was released 30 years ago, their profit is going to triple. And something which is very, very interesting, saying that the vertical linkages that we used to have during the cooperative period is very good because it can increase the income of the farmers, even triple the income of the farmers. This is something which is very good news, and it does not need a lot of investment. And what we're doing in this Transect project is to try to establish that. Now, we also looked at the competitiveness of sunflower. Now, without doing anything, no the vertical linkages, nothing, it is the 10th most profitable crop. But if we have a vertical linkage, but using the local varieties, it becomes the 7th most profitable crop. But if we have a vertical linkage, we also have an improved variety. It's going to be the 5th most profitable variety. And if we only look at the dry areas where you cannot grow tobacco or paddy, it is going to be the 2nd or the 3rd most important crop, meaning that the vertical linkage alone can create a very good competitiveness of doing the sunflower production, and it can reduce drastically the importation of edible oil. Now, what about the food security? We also looked at the impact of having vertical linkage on the food consumption of the country, and we looked at the food consumption expenditure. We found that the consumption expenditure, food consumption expenditure, will increase by 20%, and this increase is statistically significant, meaning that, yes, vertical linkage can really improve the food security, something which is very good. This is the last slide. There are important implications and conclusions that we can draw from this empirical evidence that I just presented. The first thing is that we have always been thinking about food security and just looking at production, thinking, oh, we're going to be increasing the food security during high-value crops and all that. Yes, it is true. But at the same time, we can do a lot by looking at the marketing aspects, looking at the vertical linkages that we're talking about. And the approach that we are taking in the Transect project is the one which is trying to build that and also inform the government as it tries to build these cooperative movements that we lost without knowing the impact of that. And now, if you look at the policy environment, it is also very conducive because in Tanzania, there is a new agricultural policy and the Kilimo Kwanza, agriculture first, and also the agricultural sector development program. All those objectives, they are talking about horizontal linkages and vertical linkages. So there is a very good conducive environment for us to jump in and help the government and inform it on how best that can be done. And also the increasing demand for these agricultural products, edible oil, all those things are going to be very, very, very important. Now, this is the problem. Palm oil importation accounts for 60% of the consumption in the country. It has zero import tax because of one thing. Because the one who processes that one is a very big business in the country, and it is sort of stifling development of the local processors and even the prices of the sunflower that we have. Should we recommend a tax on the palm oil? They lobbied, the processors lobbied for this, but they were asked by the government that, do you have a capacity to produce the amount of oil that we need to consume in the country? They don't have that information. Our project is planning to provide that information and at the end of the day, recommend or not recommend the tax on palm oil. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.